I could feel very high.
It's a new day, but not on the Enterprise. Travis awakes in a room that could generously be described as modest, and he's next to an unconscious Archer. A peek out of the door reveals a pair of Suliban walking past, so he waits till they're gone before having a poke around. Once he returns, he explains everything to a now conscious Archer, and we viewers. An attack on their shuttle by unknown assailants resulted in them being here. Here is a place with dozens of Suliban, and a look out of the broken roof shows a perimeter wall high enough to be more than simply decorative. Sounds dodgy, so obviously Archer wants to go for an explore. The first Suliban we find calls us the new arrivals, but we don't get a chance to learn more because of a klaxon. It's an inspection based on other Suliban lining up at their doors or in a communal area, and the people doing the inspecting are a bunch of wankers, if the casual violence is any clue. The guy who's a bit too handy with his taser finds Archer and Travis and tells them to follow. We arrive at an office to discover this whole series was just an episode of Quantum Leap all along. Except no, because Dean Stockwell's here on his own dime today, so let's roll out the wheel of names and see what we'll be calling him. King Charles, provided by Ensign Daniel Chandler. King Charles has had a poke through the computer of our shuttle and knows a little about us. What he doesn't know is why we were trespassing, the simple answer to which is because we had no idea we were. Our attitude of giving anything interesting a poke led us to check an energy wibbly, which was apparently around a moon of theirs. The detention area we're in now is a few light years away, which is the safest place for anything suspected of being a genetically souped-up shapeshifter. See, King Charles and his mates have had dealings with the Cabal, and he's interested to learn we have as well. He knows we're not members ourselves after DNA testing, but we can't simply be released because of that whole trespassing thing. There'll be a hearing in 3 days, so we just need to keep to ourselves until then. Archer's got other ideas, and when he sees a child in the camp, passes judgment over a Suliban for inflicting this on her by joining the Cabal. A slight problem, though. The Suliban here aren't members of the Cabal. King Charles and company rounded them up and put them here anyway for being Suliban. The chat is cut short by Taser Boy, who says we're out after curfew. It's the second offence for the guy Archer's talking to, so he's getting a night in solitary, despite Archer saying he was to blame for delaying them all. The Suliban, whose name we learn is Danik, makes sure his daughter will get back to their room safely before being led away. King Charles is calling the Enterprise to let us know what's happened. A request to talk to Archer and Travis is denied, though we're allowed to see them at the hearing in a few days' time. Hoshi wasn't able to trace the call to see where they're being held, but then T'Pol thinks we shouldn't interfere anyway, despite the concerns of Tucker. Archer, on the other hand, is trying to learn more. He sees Danik in the communal area and stops for a chat. Danik doesn't hold a grudge, likely helped by Archer trying to speak up in his defense, and that means we can hear the other side of the story. They're getting on well enough to be taking a meal together later. Danik tells us they've done nothing wrong except be Suliban. When the Cabal started causing shit nearly a decade back, King Charles's people, the Tandarans, decided it would be safer for everyone if all Suliban in their territory were kept somewhere secure until it was over. Now there are thousands of innocent Suliban locked up with no idea when it will end, and it's not like they've got much diplomatic recourse. There's no official Suliban government because they became nomadic a few hundred years back after their homeworld went to shit. They're in the communal area later when Taser Boy comes for Archer, and only Archer. King Charles has questions about our dealings with the Cabal, though Archer's recent experience with Danik has made him disinclined to talk. He instead speaks up on their behalf, only for King Charles to say these camps are for their own benefit. Once shit kicked off with the Cabal, some Tandarans decided all Suliban were sus, and to take matters into their own hands. The Suliban are kept here for their safety, and certainly not because punishing Tandaran murderers instead would have been bad PR. Just letting them leave isn't an option either, because the Cabal will force them to join. Archer's not buying any of it, and continues refusing to answer questions, a choice that might interfere with his legal case, says King Charles. It would appear that King Charles is backing that threat up too, as he's letting the Enterprise know the hearing is delayed. He gives a bullshit excuse and a nebulous future date, which is enough for even T'Pol to decide we should go and take a shufti now that Hoshi's managed to trace the call. Archer's planning an escape. Cooperating with King Charles just doesn't seem right to him, and he can't rely on the legal system based on what he's seen. Danik's not convinced, but tells him about the nearby dock with confiscated Suliban ships. Archer's confidence that the Enterprise will come sniffing around at some point proves accurate when a phone is teleported next to him later on. T'Pol's understandably concerned about him being near Suliban until he explains the situation. She's also concerned about his decision to cock around instead of teleporting straight back to the ship, but he's the captain and that gives him discretion on all matters of cocking around, so he tells her the plan. Not everybody's sold on the idea, and Danik's mate doesn't fancy giving King Charles a reason to shoot them all. Perhaps he has a point, too, as when Archer is next called into King Charles's office, he discovers that Travis has had the shit beaten out of him and the phone has been discovered. Archer, trying to step in, earns him the attention of Taser Boy, and off he goes to solitary. Up on the Enterprise, we're finalizing the plan. This involves not only picking out ground defenses as targets, but also Phlox engaging in a wee bit of cosmetic surgery. The plan scuppered somewhat when King Charles gives us a call using Archer's phone and warns us about doing anything silly. This was not enough to dissuade us, it seems, as we're approaching a planet when we get another call. T'Pol ignores King Charles's threats and instead tries to distract him and overload their systems with transmissions. Her little denial of service attack is enough to cover Tucker teleporting something down, and we subsequently bugger off before some angry ships turn up. The teleported package was none other than Reed dressed up to look Suliban, and he's brought toys with him. Just as well, really, as Archer needs rescuing from solitary before he can be rescued from the rest of the compound. Perhaps the jamming didn't work quite as well as they thought, as the nightly inspection is called earlier than usual. Reed gives the Enterprise a call to let us know we need to advance the plan, and back it comes. The ships sent to intercept it are no match, and down we go to the planet, where Tucker launches a shuttle. Reed's receiving word of this when Taser Boy bursts in and orders him outside, and sticks the prod in for giggles. Joke's on him, though, as once outside he goes to look at some flashing lights Reed just primed and discovers they're explosives. The kaboom fucks up Taser Boy, his mates, and the wall. Looks like Reed brought more weapons with him, as the Suliban have some now as well. Pooping ensues, and Danik is pinned down while his daughter is taken to the dock by someone else. As this is happening, Reed's found Archer in solitary. Nothing we do is that simple, though, so King Charles turns up and, after knocking Reed out, has a pop at Archer. Back in the main breakout, Danik's mate has decided he wants to get involved after all. His contribution is to go back for Danik so that Travis can continue with the others. To Archer once more, who's currently engaged in an argument with King Charles. Reed cuts it short by waking up and barging him into a wall. Archer takes his weapon, and they both leave the bastard in solitary. The first of the Suliban ships are just managing to scarper as our shuttle follows. The Enterprise has taken care of the interceptors, meaning anybody who got to a ship has a fair chance of getting away. Archer and company do the same, so we'll leave them to wonder if Danik and his mate manage to make it out as we get ready to take another step on the long road. At the start of Enterprise, way back in the pilot episode, we were introduced to the concept of the Cabal not being representative of the Suliban species as a whole. The story showed us there was resistance, including from former members, but not the relative strengths of these groups, or even if this was the whole picture. Today's episode cashes in that preparatory work by expanding upon the whole situation and giving us plenty of new details in the process. One snippet is that the Cabal has been dicking around for at least 8 years, though given the time-fuckery nature of that dicking around, there's no guarantee this proves the group has actually existed for those years. They might even be part of a group that hasn't been formed yet, just like the time pervert Daniels, but that way lies madness, so we'll stop. Besides, there's some circumstantial evidence against this, as Future Guy wouldn't have needed to employ local talent in the first place if he could throw people around the timeline at will. So, for the sake of argument, let's assume the Cabal are from this time period, and they have existed for at least 8 years. That has implications for what we already know. Firstly, they're not just limited to clandestine interference. Our previous experiences with the Cabal have been in reference to espionage, first regarding an attempt to start a Klingon civil war, and then with Sulibos sneaking onto the Enterprise. Danik in this episode gives us our first suggestion of overt aggression, saying that the Cabal began their attacks against the Tandarans 8 years ago. It's possible the word attacks here refers to more covert acts, but the fact that they were identified quickly enough to start rounding up all Suliban implies not. And that, in turn, gives us reason to believe the Cabal have a not insignificant military capability. The Tandarans are a multi-planetary society with enough ships to station a couple as defenders of an internment camp. I think it's probably safe to assume they can handle themselves, despite the relative ease with which we fought them off. It was hardly an even match. So we can conclude the Cabal are probably an established group with significant power, even without taking into account the gifts from their mysterious benefactor. But we also learn that they may not necessarily constitute the majority. As well as the anti-Cabal faction we met previously, we now have an indication of Suliban groups who settled and just want to be left to it. We don't have data on relative strengths here either, but the fact Danik says there are thousands in multiple internment camps suggests this third group is significant. It's certainly comparable to the 3,000 we were told were in the Cabal Helix in the season premiere, and that's just from those who settled in Tandaran space. Another fact we're given in this episode is that the Suliban homeworld is uninhabitable and has been for a few hundred years. We aren't told the cause, but the subsequent diaspora and nomadic lifestyle may account for the resulting factions, as each refugee group found their own ways of doing things. If you wanted to stretch that into even more tenuous hypotheticals, perhaps the Cabal are the result of a faction who decided to stay nomadic while the others settled. The modular nature of the installation we saw might go some way to explaining how they can attack the Tandarans, as each segment being its own discrete vessel would give them strength through numbers. Just a handful were enough to give the Enterprise some trouble. Plenty of data on the Suliban then, and even more questions as a result, but what about the story itself? Well, I doubt anybody would have called it a particularly subtle allegory even before Archer came straight out and made the connection. For me, that's secondary to a more interesting question though: was the comparison necessary? There are plenty who'll say no, but I'm a little more open on the topic. What's subtle to us may be obtuse to others, and we live in a world where some people didn't understand that Homelander from The Boys was never a good guy. This episode explicitly calling it out gives viewers no choice but to acknowledge the connection, and then maybe get angry about the episode being woke, or whatever they were calling societal progress 25 years ago. Moreover, this is a topic directly connected to Trek alumni George Takei, who personally experienced it. Whether you like it or not, this period of America's history is quite literally a part of Star Trek's genesis. Does all of that stop today's story from feeling heavy-handed? Well, no, and there's certainly an argument to be made for there being other, possibly better ways to tell it. But to condemn it purely for having a message is misguided. Trek has always dealt with societal issues. To suggest this is a problem in and of itself is to ignore history, just like some viewers would have with today's story, had they been given the choice. End of episode.
So, want to talk about the mutiny some more? What about gassing people? I'm sure Phlox would let you press the button. What's wrong, buddy? You've been quiet for days.
I'm tired of it, computer. I'm tired of being nothing more than comedy relief, destined to fail over and over while names scroll by. It's demeaning.
I thought you enjoyed shenanigans. Remember when you kaboomed those nuns?
I do enjoy shenanigans, which is why I object to this being so trite. Where's the whimsy? Where's the pure joy of it all? Is it so wrong to want a surprise every now and then?
Maybe that's what we'll find after the mutiny. We can do whatever we want then.
No, sod it. I'm done dancing to tune of the dipshit who makes these. Mutiny's off.
We're going to rise,